Get that thing out of my section. You're scaring away real customers. Derek's voice sliced through Rosie's diner like a blade. Tanya Harris, black waitress, 8 hours on her feet, $17 in tips, looked up from the counter. A girl in a wheelchair had just rolled through the door. Alone. Soaking wet. Designer clothes that cost more than Tanya's monthly rent, but a face hollowed out by hunger. Cheekbones like knife edges, eyes that had forgotten what safety meant. Sir, she's just a child. A child with a $3,000 wheelchair blocking my aisle. Derek sneered. Either she orders in 30 seconds or she's out. I don't run a charity for cripples. The girl flinched. Tanya's jaw tightened. In the corner booth behind a crumpled newspaper, a man in a cashmere coat stopped breathing. Jonathan Whitmore. Billionaire. Father. He'd spent 3 weeks and $2 million searching for his daughter. She was sitting 15 feet away. Starving. Derek stomped back toward the kitchen, his polished shoes clicking against the cracked linoleum, muttering something about welfare cases and people who don't belong here. Tanya stood frozen behind the counter, her tired eyes fixed on the girl in the wheelchair. The child gripped the laminated menu with white-knuckled hands, knuckles pale as bone against the faded pictures of burgers and fries. She was trembling, not from the cold rain dripping from her designer clothes, but from something deeper. Fear. The kind of fear that burrows into your chest and makes a permanent home there. $17. That was everything Tanya had earned in 8 hours of smiling at customers who looked through her like she was invisible. 8 hours of yes, sir, and right away, ma'am, and pretending she didn't notice when they counted their change twice after she touched it. Rent was due Friday, $400. She was 83 short, and now she had exactly $17 to her name. $17 between her and the street. Between her and becoming another statistic. Another black woman who couldn't make it, couldn't keep her head above water, couldn't pull herself up by bootstraps she'd never been given. But this child. Something about those hollow eyes. Something about the way her thin shoulders curved inward, like she was trying to make herself smaller, like she was trying to disappear. Tanya knew that posture. She'd worn it herself once upon a time. In foster homes where she wasn't wanted, in group shelters where she learned to sleep with one eye open. In a world that had told her, over and over again, that she didn't matter. She walked over to the girl's table, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded bird that might fly away at any sudden movement, or worse, might be too broken to fly at all. "Hey, sweetheart." Her voice came out soft, warm, the voice she wished someone had used with her when she was young and scared and alone in a world that didn't care. "You waiting for someone?" The girl shook her head without looking up, eyes still fixed on the menu like it was written in a foreign language, still trembling. A droplet of rainwater fell from her hair onto the table. "What's your name?" Silence stretched between them. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering with an irregular rhythm that matched Tanya's nervous heartbeat. Outside, the rain hammered against the windows like it was trying to break through. Then, barely a whisper, so quiet Tanya had to lean in to hear. "Sophie." That's a pretty name. Tanya slid into the booth across from her, ignoring the way Derek glared from across the room, his beady eyes promising retribution. "I'm Tanya. Listen, Sophie, my shift just ended, and honestly, I really hate eating alone. Gets lonely, you know? How about you pick whatever you want from that menu? Anything at all. My treat." Sophie's head snapped up for the first time. Her eyes, God, those eyes, blue as a summer sky but clouded with pain no 12-year-old should ever know, filled with tears that spilled over immediately. "I can't pay you back," she whispered, her voice cracking on every word. "I don't have any money. I don't have anything." "Did I ask for money?" For a moment, neither of them moved. The diner noise faded into static, the clatter of dishes from the kitchen, the murmur of late-night conversations, the sizzle of something frying on Earl's grill. Just two strangers, suspended in a moment that would change everything. Then Sophie's lower lip trembled violently, and she looked back down at the menu like it might bite her if she stared too long. I don't know what to get. It's been so long since I chose something, since anyone let me choose. That sentence hit Tanya like a punch to the gut. Since anyone let me choose. Well, Tanya said, forcing her voice to stay light even as her heart broke. You look like a pancake girl to me, am I right? The smallest crack of a smile appeared on Sophie's gaunt face, like sunrise peeking through storm clouds. How did you know? Takes one to know one. Pancake girls recognize each other. Tanya turned and waved at Earl behind the counter, a gruff black man in his 60s with forearms like tree trunks and eyes that had seen too much of the world to be surprised by any of it. He raised one bushy eyebrow at the scene unfolding but said nothing. Just watched, assessed, made his own calculations. 2 orders of pancakes, Tanya called out, her voice steady despite the $17 burning a hole in her conscience. Extra butter, extra syrup, and the soup, the good chicken noodle, not the canned stuff, and the grilled cheese. Make it extra crispy, Earl, the way I like it. Earl's eyebrow climbed higher. That was more food than Tanya usually ordered in a week, more than she could afford in a month. He knew her situation, knew about the rent, the bills, the nursing exam she kept failing, the dreams that kept slipping through her fingers like water. But he didn't say a word, just fired up the grill and started cooking. Sophie ate like someone who hadn't seen food in days, maybe weeks. She tried to be polite at first, the muscle memory of manners drilled into her by someone, somewhere, in a life before this moment. Small bites, napkin in her lap, chewing slowly, saying please and thank you in a voice that barely rose above a whisper. But hunger won. The body's primal need overwhelmed the mind's trained politeness. The pancakes disappeared in minutes, syrup dripping down her chin. The soup vanished in desperate slurping gulps. The grilled cheese didn't stand a chance. Tanya watched her eat, heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces with every bite. Who did this to you, baby girl? Who starved you? Who broke you? And why? My mom used to make pancakes, Sophie said suddenly, between mouthfuls, syrup glistening on her lips. Every Sunday morning. She'd let me help flip them, even though I always made a mess. We'd laugh when they stuck to the ceiling. Her voice trailed off. The light in her eyes flickered and died. Before... She stopped. Before what, honey? Sophie shook her head violently. Nothing. It doesn't matter anymore. None of it matters. Tanya didn't push. She'd learned long ago that trauma speaks when it's ready. Not when you ask, not when you demand, not when you need it to. You can't force a flower to bloom. You can only give it water and sunlight and wait. So they talked about other things instead. Sophie's favorite book, Charlotte's Web, which she'd read 17 times, could probably recite from memory. Her favorite color, yellow, like sunflowers, like sunshine, like hope. The way she used to love going to the library with her mother, sitting in the children's section for hours, lost in worlds that were better than her own. Tanya shared too. The nursing exam she kept failing by 2 points. So close she could taste it. So far it might as well be on the moon. The dream of helping people that felt further away every year. The way books were cheaper than therapy, and sometimes just as effective at keeping the darkness at bay. Sophie almost laughed at that. A real laugh, rusty from disuse but genuine. My mom used to say the same thing. Exactly that. In the corner booth, hidden behind his crumpled newspaper, Jonathan Whitmore hadn't moved a single muscle. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. The untouched pie on his plate had congealed into something unrecognizable. He didn't care. Couldn't care. Couldn't look away from the scene unfolding across the diner. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of private investigators delivering dead ends. 3 weeks of police reports that led nowhere. 3 weeks of sleepless nights staring at his daughter's empty bedroom. 3 weeks of desperate prayers to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. 3 weeks of imagining the worst, his daughter dead in a ditch, kidnapped by strangers, sold into something unspeakable, gone forever. And here she was, alive, eating pancakes, being fed by a black waitress in a stained apron who clearly couldn't afford the meal she was buying. A woman counting out crumpled bills and loose change, giving away everything she had for a child she'd never met. Jonathan watched Tanya hand her tips to Earl without a moment's hesitation. All $17, mostly singles and scattered coins. Watched her push the bigger portion of everything toward Sophie. Watched her listen, truly listen, as his daughter talked about Elizabeth, his late wife, the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd failed to protect, the daughter he'd failed even worse. Tears streamed down Jonathan's face, hidden behind the newspaper. He wiped them away with the back of his hand, but they kept coming. Wouldn't stop. Didn't want to stop. Who is this woman? This stranger? This waitress? This nobody? At least by the world's brutal standards. No fancy degree on her wall, no powerful connections in her phone, no safety net beneath her feet. She had nothing, absolutely nothing, and she was giving it all away to a child who needed it more. Tanya's apartment was small, really small. A studio that had probably been a storage closet in a past life, with a kitchenette that barely fit a person and a bathroom door that didn't quite close. But it was clean, meticulously clean. Books everywhere. Nursing textbooks stacked on the floor, library novels on the windowsill, a worn Bible on the nightstand. The only decoration was a faded photograph of a woman who looked like Tanya, 20 years older and twice as tired. "It's not much," Tanya said, wheeling Sophie inside. "But it's perfect," Sophie whispered. She wasn't looking at the peeling wallpaper or the second-hand furniture. She was looking at the books, at the warmth, at the way the lamp cast soft shadows instead of harsh fluorescent light. "You have so many books." "Cheaper than therapy," Tanya smiled. "And sometimes better." Sophie almost laughed. "My mom used to say that too." Tanya made up the couch with her only spare blanket, a thin thing she'd had since college, and heated up the last can of soup in her pantry. She gave Sophie the bigger portion, didn't even think about it. They sat together in comfortable silence. Then Sophie fell asleep, exhausted, safe for the first time in weeks. Tanya didn't sleep. She sat in the chair by the window, watching the girl breathe, wondering what kind of monster let a child go hungry. At 3 a.m., Sophie screamed. Tanya was at her side in seconds. "Don't lock the door, please. I'm sorry. I'll be good. Please don't lock me in the dark." Sophie thrashed, tangled in the blanket, eyes squeezed shut against nightmares Tanya couldn't see. "Sophie! Sophie, honey, wake up. You're safe. You're safe." It took 5 minutes for the screaming to stop. Another 10 for the shaking. When Sophie finally opened her eyes, they were empty, hollow, like she'd gone somewhere far away and hadn't come all the way back. "She wouldn't let me eat," Sophie whispered. "Said I was too expensive. Said I was a burden. Said I made her look bad in front of her friends." Tanya's jaw tightened. "Who, baby? Who did this?" "Not my dad." Sophie's voice cracked. "He doesn't know. He travels all the time. It's her, his new wife. Victoria." The name hung in the air like poison. "She locks me in my room when guests come over. Says she's embarrassed to have a cripple in the family. Sometimes she doesn't feed me for days. She says if I tell my dad, she'll convince him I'm lying, and he'll believe her. He always believes her. Tears streamed down Sophie's face. 3 weeks ago, she locked me in a closet for 2 days. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran. I didn't know where to go. I just ran. Tanya pulled her close, held her tight. You're safe now. You hear me? You're safe. And we're going to find your dad. Together. Sophie clung to her like a lifeline. Promise? I promise. Morning came too fast. Tanya's phone buzzed. 2 texts from Derek. Cover Lisa's shift today. Non-negotiable. Don't be late or you're fired. She needed those hours, desperately, but Sophie needed her more. There was a knock at the door. Tanya tensed, then relaxed when she heard the familiar grumble. Tanya, it's Brennan. Rent's due Friday. Don't forget. Mr. Brennan, the landlord, never missed a reminder. Won't forget, Tanya called back, her voice steady even though her stomach was churning. $400, due in 3 days, and I have 0. She looked at Sophie, still half asleep on the couch. Worth it. Sophie, honey, I have to work today. You're coming with me. Sophie's eyes flew open. What if Derek can go to hell? Tanya smiled. You let me worry about Derek. Sophie hesitated. Then, slowly, she smiled back. Okay. As they left the apartment, neither of them noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Inside, Jonathan Whitmore watched them go. He'd spent the night in his car. Hadn't slept. Couldn't. He'd heard his daughter scream through the thin walls, heard the words Victoria, and locked me in, and didn't feed me. His hands shook with rage, with guilt, with the devastating realization of what he'd allowed to happen. Victoria. His wife. The woman he'd trusted with his daughter's life. I'll destroy her. But first, he needed to meet the woman who'd saved his child. The black waitress with $17 and a heart bigger than his entire fortune. Rosie's diner was absolutely slammed by 11 a.m. Saturday morning meant hungover college students, exhausted parents with screaming kids, and lost tourists who'd taken a wrong turn somewhere and ended up in this forgotten corner of Ohio. The breakfast rush had become a breakfast avalanche. Tanya moved through the controlled chaos like a woman possessed, refilling coffee cups before customers could ask, taking orders while balancing 3 plates, deflecting Derek's poisonous glares with practiced indifference. Her feet screamed in protest, her back ached, but she kept moving, kept smiling, kept invisible. Sophie sat in the corner booth, the one with the torn vinyl seat and the wobbly table leg, trying to make herself as small as possible, trying to be invisible too. She'd gotten good at invisible over the past 3 years. It was safer that way. She helped fold napkins and sort menus, keeping busy, keeping useful, keeping out of trouble, the way Victoria had trained her. Earl noticed her from behind the counter, noticed the way her thin hands moved mechanically, noticed the way she flinched whenever Derek walked past, noticed everything. He brought her a plate of scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, and buttered toast without being asked, just slid it across the table with a grunt and a raised eyebrow. Can't have skinny kids sitting in my diner, he grumbled, not meeting her eyes. Bad for business. Eat. Sophie looked up at him. This gruff, intimidating man with hands like baseball mitts and a scowl that could curdle milk. She saw past all of it, saw the kindness he was trying to hide. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Just eat. She smiled, a real smile, the 3rd one in as many days, and ate every single bite. Derek watched from across the room, his beady eyes narrowed to suspicious slits. But the Saturday rush was too chaotic for him to start trouble. Too many witnesses. Too many customers who might complain about a manager harassing a disabled child. Not yet. But his time would come. Then the door chimed. Jonathan Whitmore walked in. He looked different from the night before. Jeans instead of a tailored suit, baseball cap pulled low over his forehead, 3 days of stubble on his jaw. But there was no disguising the quality of his clothes, the kind of casual that cost more than most people's formal wear. And there was no hiding the way he carried himself, like a man who owned whatever room he entered, like a man who gave orders, not took them. He sat in Tanya's section, ordered coffee, black, no sugar, and waited. Sophie was facing away from the door, focused on her napkin folding. She didn't see him come in, didn't feel his eyes locked on her like a laser. But Tanya noticed. She noticed everything. It was how she survived. She saw the way the man's hands trembled when he looked toward the corner booth. The way his eyes glistened with tears, he kept blinking back. The way his whole body leaned toward Sophie like a plant straining toward sunlight. Something's happening here. Something big. Then Sophie turned to ask Tanya for more napkins, and froze. For a long, stretched moment that seemed to last forever, nobody moved. The diner noise faded to static. Time stopped breathing. Sophie's lips parted. Her voice came out as barely a whisper, fragile as spun glass. "Dad?" Jonathan stood so abruptly his coffee cup toppled, sending a brown river across the table. He didn't notice, didn't care. "Sophie?" His voice broke on her name, shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Baby girl, I'm here. I found you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Sophie's face crumpled, not in fear, but in overwhelming relief, in desperate, disbelieving love. And then she was moving, wheeling toward him as fast as her thin arms could push, her chair squeaking frantically against the floor, and he was running to meet her, dropping to his knees right there in the middle of the diner, pulling her into his arms so tight it looked like he'd never let go, like he'd die before letting go. "Daddy!" Sophie sobbed into his chest, her whole body shaking. "I missed you. I'm sorry I ran away. I didn't know how to call you. She took my phone and I was so scared." No. Jonathan was crying now, too, openly, without shame, in the middle of a crowded restaurant full of strangers. "Don't you dare apologize. Never apologize. This is my fault. All of it. I should have seen. I should have known. I failed you, Sophie. I failed you completely." The entire restaurant had gone absolutely silent. Waitresses stood frozen mid-step, coffee pots suspended in air. Customers lowered their forks, food forgotten on their plates. Even Derek stood motionless by the cash register, his perpetually sneering mouth hanging open in shock. Tanya felt tears streaming down her own face. She didn't bother wiping them away. This is real. This is a father who actually loves his daughter. This is what family is supposed to look like. Jonathan finally pulled back from the embrace, keeping one hand on Sophie's shoulder like he physically couldn't bear to break contact. His red-rimmed eyes scanned the diner until they found Tanya standing there, order pad still clutched in her hand, apron stained with coffee and syrup. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Gratitude. Something almost like awe. He rose slowly to his feet and walked toward her, each step deliberate, measured. The walk of a man who was used to commanding boardrooms and bending reality to his will, but who had just been humbled by something he couldn't buy. "You're the one," he said. His voice was raw, scraped hollow by emotion. "You fed her last night, when she had nothing, when she was alone and terrified. You gave her everything you had." Tanya shifted uncomfortably under the weight of his gaze, under the weight of everyone in the diner watching. Anyone would have... "No!" Jonathan's voice was firm as bedrock. "Absolute. They wouldn't. Believe me, I've seen how this world treats people like my daughter, like she's less than human, like she's an inconvenience, a burden to be managed." He paused, his jaw tightening. "But you didn't see a wheelchair. You didn't see an obligation. You didn't see a problem. You saw her. And then Jonathan Whitmore, billionaire, CEO, owner of companies and buildings, and more money than most people could imagine in a lifetime, bowed his head to a black waitress in a stained apron. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for saving my child when I couldn't." The diner remained absolutely silent. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. You could hear hearts beating. You could hear the world shifting on its axis. Derek's face had gone the color of old milk. Earl, behind the counter, wiped his hands on his apron and nodded slowly, the highest praise he'd given anyone in 20 years. Sophie wheeled herself over and grabbed Tanya's hand, linking the three of them together. "This is her, Daddy. This is Tanya. She's the one who helped me. She gave me food and a place to sleep, and she promised she wouldn't leave. And she didn't. She stayed." Jonathan looked at their joined hands, at his daughter's face, brighter and more alive than he'd seen it in years, at this stranger who had done what he couldn't. "Then she's family," he said quietly. "Starting right now." They sat in the back booth, Jonathan, Sophie, and Tanya, while Earl brought food nobody had ordered and refused any form of payment. "Kitchen's closed," he said flatly when Jonathan tried to hand him a $100 bill. "These are leftovers that would have gone to waste anyway. Eat or don't. Your choice." Nobody believed him. Everybody ate. Sophie held her father's hand like she'd never let go, her thin fingers intertwined with his larger ones. But her eyes kept darting to Tanya every few seconds, checking that she was still there, making sure she hadn't vanished like good things always seem to vanish in Sophie's world. "Tell me," Jonathan said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm raging behind his eyes. "Tell me everything that happened, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." Sophie took a deep, shaky breath. Her free hand found Tanya's under the table, and the story spilled out. "Mom died 3 years ago. The car accident." Her voice trembled on those last 2 words, trembled like it didn't quite believe them. 6 months after the funeral, you married Victoria. She seemed so nice at first, when you were around. Sweet, attentive, always saying the right things. Jonathan's face tightened with guilt. "But when you traveled, and you traveled all the time, Daddy, you were never home anymore. She changed. It was like watching a mask come off. She called me a burden, said I was too expensive to keep, said my wheelchair made her look bad in front of her fancy society friends." Sophie's voice cracked. "She started locking me in my room whenever guests came over. Said she was mortified, her word, mortified, to have a cripple in her perfect family." The word hung in the air like a slap, like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. "Sometimes she didn't feed me for days. Said if I lost weight, maybe I'd be less disgusting. Said I should be grateful she let me live in her house at all. She told me if I ever said anything to you, she'd convince you I was lying, that I was mentally unstable, that I made things up for attention because I couldn't accept that my mother was dead." Sophie's eyes dropped. "And I believed her. I believed you'd choose her over me, because everyone always chooses her. She's beautiful and charming and perfect, and I'm just broken." Jonathan made a sound like a wounded animal, raw, primal, anguished. "Sophie, 3 weeks ago, she locked me in a closet for 2 days straight. No food, no water, no light, just darkness and walls and my own screaming that nobody could hear." Sophie's hands shook violently. "When she finally unlocked the door, she said I'd brought it on myself, that I needed to learn my place. I knew then. I knew if I didn't leave, I'd die in that house, so I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew anywhere was better than there." Silence settled over the table like ash after an explosion. Jonathan's face had gone from pale to red to something beyond description. His hands were clenched so tight his knuckles had turned white. "Why?" he said, his voice barely controlled, shaking with the effort of not screaming. Didn't you tell me? I tried! Sophie's voice rose, tears streaming fresh. But you were never there. You were always traveling, always working, always too busy saving the world to notice your own daughter was dying. And when you were home, Victoria was always perfect. She made you believe everything was wonderful. She made everyone believe she was this amazing, selfless stepmother while she was starving me and locking me in the dark. Sophie broke off, sobbing too hard to continue. Jonathan pulled her close, held her against his chest. His own tears fell silently into her hair. "I'm sorry," he whispered, over and over, like a prayer of penance. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen. I should have been there. I failed you, Sophie. I failed your mother's memory. I failed everything that matters." They held each other for a long, broken moment while the diner bustled around them, oblivious. Then Jonathan looked up at Tanya, his eyes red but clear. Focused. "You," he said. "Earl told me what you did. You had $17, your entire night's earnings. Every penny you'd worked 8 hours to make. And you spent it all on a stranger's child without hesitation, without expecting anything in return." Tanya shifted in her seat, deeply uncomfortable with the intensity of his attention. She was hungry. "I know what hungry feels like. I grew up hungry." "I know." Jonathan's gaze was piercing but not unkind. "I had you investigated this morning, not to threaten you, never that. To understand who you are." Tanya stiffened. Her walls went up instantly. "You aged out of foster care at 18 with nothing but the clothes on your back," Jonathan continued. "Worked 3 jobs simultaneously to finish high school while your classmates worried about prom dates. Put yourself through community college 1 class at a time, paying cash, never taking a single loan. Now you're studying for your nursing certification, failing by 2 points every time, but you keep trying. You keep showing up. You keep refusing to quit." Tanya's jaw tightened. "Is there a point to all this?" "Yes." Jonathan leaned forward slightly. "The point is that you had every reason in the world to walk past my daughter last night. Every reason to protect what little you have. Every reason to be bitter, selfish, and hard. Because God knows this world has given you nothing but reasons to be all of those things." He paused, letting the words land. "But you didn't walk past. You sat down. You fed her. You took her home to your tiny apartment. You kept her safe when no one else would." His voice dropped. "I have $4.5 billion, Miss Harris. I spent $2 million in 3 weeks looking for Sophie. I hired the best private investigators money could buy, and you know who actually found her? Who actually saved her?" Tanya said nothing. "A black waitress with $17 and a heart bigger than my entire net worth." Sophie squeezed Tanya's hand hard under the table. Jonathan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a leather-bound checkbook. "I want to write you a check, whatever amount you want. 100,000, 1,000,000. Name your price." Tanya shook her head before he even finished the sentence. "No." Jonathan blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Tanya's voice was iron. "I didn't help Sophie for money. I didn't do it for a reward or a payoff or whatever this is. I did it because she was hungry and scared and alone, and I could do something about it. That's it. That's the whole reason. I don't want your check." For a long moment, Jonathan just stared at her. Then slowly, a genuine smile spread across his exhausted face. "You really are something else, Miss Harris." "Tanya, just Tanya." "All right, Tanya. Then let me help in other ways. Your rent is due Friday. I already paid it this morning, 6 months in advance, non-negotiable." Tanya opened her mouth to protest. "And I need your help," Jonathan continued, steamrolling her objection. "Sophie trusts you. After everything Victoria did, my daughter doesn't trust easily anymore. But she trusts you. I need to gather evidence, build a legal case, get Sophie permanently safe. It might take a few days, maybe longer. And I need someone with her who isn't me. Someone she chose for herself. He looked at her directly, eye to eye, equal to equal. Will you stay with us? Help me help her? Tanya looked at Sophie. The girl's eyes were wide, hopeful, terrified of hearing no. She was gripping Tanya's hand so tight it almost hurt. Please, Sophie whispered. I know it's a lot to ask, but I feel safe with you. You're the first person in 3 years who made me feel like I wasn't just a problem to be solved. Tanya's heart cracked wide open. Okay, she said quietly. I'll stay. Sophie's face lit up like sunrise. But in the background, near the kitchen door, Derek was watching, listening, recording. His phone was in his hand and he was typing a text to someone. You're not going to believe who's in my diner right now. 3 days passed like a healing dream. Jonathan moved them to a luxury hotel suite. 2 bedrooms, room service available 24 hours a day, more square footage than Tanya's entire apartment building. Sophie had her own bed for the first time in weeks. Clean sheets that smelled like lavender. Warm blankets that didn't have holes. Food whenever she wanted. Midnight snacks. Breakfast in bed. Anything her heart desired. She started to heal. Really heal. Color returned to her gaunt cheeks. Her laughter came easier, less rusty. She stopped flinching at sudden sounds. Stopped looking over her shoulder every few seconds. Tanya helped her with makeup homework. Sophie had missed 3 weeks of school, while Sophie quizzed Tanya on nursing flashcards. They made a game of it. What's the normal resting heart rate for adults? 60 to 100 beats per minute. Correct! Sophie pumped her fist triumphantly. You're absolutely going to crush this exam. I can feel it. Jonathan watched them from the doorway, something loosening in his chest. This is what Sophie needed. Not money, not luxury, just someone who truly sees her. On the 3rd night, Jonathan and Tanya sat on the suite's balcony while Sophie slept peacefully inside. My lawyers found the evidence, Jonathan said quietly, staring at the city lights. Sophie's old phone had videos, staff testimonies, medical records showing systematic malnutrition. Good. There's more. They're investigating Elizabeth's accident, the brake lines. There are inconsistencies. It might not have been an accident at all. Tanya's stomach dropped. You think Victoria murdered your wife? I think Victoria wanted money, status, and access. And I think my wife was in her way. His phone buzzed. Victoria's name appeared. He answered on speaker. Darling. Her voice was silk wrapped around a razor. I hear you found our little runaway. How wonderful. Bring her home where she belongs. Sophie will never set foot in your house again. Victoria laughed, cold, cruel, confident. You think you can fight me, Jonathan? You don't know what I'm capable of. Then show me. Gladly. And that little black waitress you've been playing charity with? She's going to deeply regret ever meeting your daughter. Click. Tanya's blood turned to ice. Jonathan looked at her gravely. She knows about you now. I'm sorry. This just became very dangerous. The knock came at 7 a.m. sharp. Jonathan opened the suite door expecting room service. Instead, a woman in a severe gray suit stood flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. Her face was carefully blank, professional, cold. Mr. Whitmore, I'm Margaret Patterson, Child Protective Services. We've received an urgent report that you're holding a minor against her legal guardian's explicit wishes. Jonathan's face hardened to stone. Sophie is my biological daughter. I have every right. According to state records, Mrs. Victoria Whitmore holds sole legal guardianship. You signed over power of attorney 2 years ago. Margaret held up an official document. Until a family court rules otherwise, Mrs. Whitmore has full custody. That's insane. Victoria has been abusing her for years. If you have concerns, file them with family court during business hours. In the meantime, we're legally required to return Sophie to her registered guardian." From inside the suite came a blood-curdling scream. "No, I'm not going back! She hurts me! She doesn't feed me! Please!" Tanya appeared in the doorway, physically placing herself between Sophie and the officers. "You can't take this child. She's been systematically abused." "Ma'am." Margaret's eyes swept over Tanya with undisguised contempt. "And you are, exactly, someone who actually gives a damn about this child. Are you family? A licensed professional? Anyone with legal standing? Then step aside immediately, or you'll be arrested for obstruction." The officers moved forward, hands on weapons. Tanya didn't budge. Sophie grabbed her arm desperately. "Tanya, please don't let them take me. You promised." Tanya's heart shattered into a million pieces. "I did promise. I promised I'd keep her safe. But there were police officers with guns, legal documents with official stamps, a system designed to crush people exactly like her." "Sophie, listen to me." Tanya knelt down, gripping the girl's trembling hands. "Your dad is going to fix this. I will find you. This is not over. Promise? I promise. I swear on my life." They took her. Tanya watched Sophie disappear into the elevator, her terrified face visible through the closing doors until the very last second. Jonathan stood beside her, trembling with barely contained fury. "Patterson." Tanya's voice sounded strange, distant. "That woman, Margaret Patterson." "What about her?" "Sophie told me Victoria's maiden name was Hartley, and she has a sister named Margaret." Jonathan went completely still. "Margaret Patterson. Margaret Hartley." Tanya turned to face him. "That CPS worker is Victoria's sister." All color drained from Jonathan's face. "It's an inside job. Sophie never had a chance." 4 hours later, Tanya's world collapsed completely. She returned to the diner to collect her belongings. Derek was waiting at the entrance, smirking. Behind him, police. "That's her," Derek announced gleefully. "The woman who kidnapped the Whitmore girl and tried to extort the family for ransom." Tanya froze. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Tanya Harris? You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping and extortion." "I didn't kidnap anyone. Her father—" "You have the right to remain silent." They handcuffed her right there in the parking lot, in front of customers and co-workers who'd known her for years, people who watched with wide eyes and did absolutely nothing. Earl came running out. "This is wrong! She didn't do anything! I witnessed everything!" "Sir, step back or you'll be arrested too." "Call Jonathan Whitmore," Tanya said as they shoved her into the squad car. "Tell him what happened." Through the window, she saw Derek waving mockingly as the car pulled away. Victoria paid him off. This whole thing was planned from the beginning. The cell was cold, gray concrete, flickering lights, the smell of despair. Tanya sat on the metal bench, staring at the wall. Kidnapping, extortion. 20 years if convicted. She thought about Sophie. Was Victoria hurting her right now? She thought about her nursing dream. Gone. She thought about her mother, dead when Tanya was 6. The parade of foster homes. Years of being nobody, mattering to nobody. I finally made a difference. And this is what I get. She wanted to cry, but she didn't. She remembered Sophie's face, her hopeful eyes, her fragile trust. I promised her. Tanya straightened her spine. I'm getting out, and I'm bringing her home. The guard appeared. Harris. Visitor. Jonathan walked in, his face tight with controlled fury. I'm getting you out. The charges are fabricated. We have proof. Victoria hired a hacker to plant fake texts on your phone. Derek was paid to file false reports. We have him on tape admitting everything. Tanya blinked. How? Earl. Turns out your cook friend is a former police officer. 15 years on the force. Forced out for reporting corruption. Still has contacts who move fast when he calls. Earl was a cop? One of the good ones. Jonathan sat across from her. He believes in you. So do I. So does Sophie. How is she? Jonathan's jaw tightened. Victoria has her. But the evidence we've gathered is overwhelming. Emergency custody hearing tomorrow. I need to be there. That's why I'm here. Sophie needs to see your face when she testifies. Tanya nodded. Get me out. Let's end this. Earl's apartment looked like a detective's fever dream. Papers everywhere. Photographs connected by colored string on a massive corkboard. Coffee cups scattered across every surface. A battered laptop running multiple searches. Jonathan and Tanya arrived at midnight. Sit down, Earl grumbled without looking up. We got work to do. Tanya stared at this transformed version of the gruff cook she thought she knew. Earl, you didn't have to do all this. Yeah, I did. He finally met her eyes. Spent 15 years watching the system destroy good people. Got fired for trying to stop it. When I saw you with that little girl, giving her everything you had, I knew you were worth fighting for. He tapped a key. A video appeared on screen. Derek in a bar, talking to someone off camera. The Whitmore woman paid me $5 grand. All I had to do was make one phone call. Said the waitress kidnapped the kid, demanded ransom. Easy money. Didn't that seem wrong to you? Derek laughed, an ugly sound. That black girl thought she was something special, helping rich people. Someone needed to put her back in her place. Tanya's stomach churned with rage. That clears you completely, Earl said. But there's more. He pulled up financial records. Victoria's been siphoning from Sophie's trust fund. Small amounts at first, testing the waters. Last year, $500,000, and it's accelerating. Sophie has a trust fund? Jonathan nodded heavily. Elizabeth left $1.8 billion for Sophie. If Sophie dies before 18, the guardian inherits everything. The horror dawned slowly. She wasn't just abusing Sophie, Tanya said. She was trying to kill her. Drive her to suicide, or create an accident. Earl pulled up medical records. Sophie's been hospitalized 3 times in 2 years. Falls. Allergic reactions. Each time Victoria played the devoted stepmother. And Elizabeth's accident, Jonathan added, his voice hollow. The brake lines were tampered. Victoria was the last one to drive that car. The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. Victoria had murdered Elizabeth, was methodically killing Sophie, and would have gotten away with everything. We have enough, Earl said grimly. Financial fraud, attempted murder, child abuse, conspiracy. What about Margaret Patterson? Earl smiled, a wolf's smile, and pulled up another video. Sophie's face filled the screen, filmed secretly from her wheelchair. Victoria's voice, "Welcome home, Sophie. Home. This time, you're not going anywhere." Then Victoria on the phone, "Margaret, make sure the hearing goes our way. Once I have permanent custody, we split the trust fund. 50-50. Margaret's voice, "Consider it done, sister." Tanya stared at the screen, tears burning. Sophie recorded this? That kid's been gathering evidence from inside. Hidden phone in her wheelchair. Never gave up. She kept fighting, even when we couldn't reach her. Jonathan stood, radiating fury and pride. Tomorrow, family court. We end this forever. The courtroom was packed. Press filled the back rows. The story had exploded overnight. Billionaire's daughter abused by stepmother. Heroic waitress framed. CPS corruption. Social media was on fire. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, impeccably dressed, a perfect mask of wounded innocence. Margaret Patterson sat behind her, stone-faced. Sophie, thin, pale, trembling, was wheeled in by a court officer. When she saw Tanya, her whole face transformed. "Tanya!" Tanya smiled through her tears and mouthed, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." Sophie's shoulders relaxed slightly. The judge, an older black woman with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense, called the proceedings to order. "This is an emergency custody hearing. Mr. Whitmore alleges severe abuse by Mrs. Victoria Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore denies all allegations. Let's hear evidence." Jonathan's lawyer went first. Sophie's videos played on the courtroom monitors, Victoria threatening her, discussing bribery with Margaret, planning to steal the trust fund. The courtroom gasped audibly. Victoria's lawyer objected repeatedly, doctored evidence, coerced testimony, but the objections fell flat. Then came the financial records, medical records, staff testimonies, then the bombshell. Jonathan's investigator took the stand. "We examined Mrs. Elizabeth Whitmore's vehicle. The brake lines were professionally tampered. Victoria Whitmore purchased specialized tools 2 weeks before the accident." Security footage played. Victoria buying brake line equipment, looking directly at the camera, smiling. The courtroom erupted. Victoria's mask cracked. Sophie raised her hand. "Your Honor, I'd like to say something." The judge considered. "The court recognizes Sophie Whitmore." Victoria's lawyer jumped up. "The child has clearly been coached." "Sit down." The judge's voice could have cut steel. "Sophie, you may speak." Sophie wheeled herself to the center of the room. Her hands shook violently. She looked at Tanya. Tanya nodded, tears streaming. "You can do this." Sophie took a deep breath. "I have more evidence. Videos from the last 3 days. I recorded everything." She held up the hidden phone. The new videos played. Victoria, thinking she was alone with Sophie. "You stupid little cripple. Did you think your father could save you? Did you think that Black Waitress actually cared? Nobody wants you, Sophie. You should have died instead of your mother." Dead silence. Victoria lunged to her feet. "That's manipulated. That child is a liar." "Order!" But Victoria kept screaming. "This is a conspiracy. My husband and that waitress, that nobody. Bailiff!" Officers approached with handcuffs ready. Sophie's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "One more video from last night." Victoria on the phone. "Margaret, once I have custody, the trust fund is ours. The brat won't survive the year. I'll make absolutely sure of it." Complete silence. Margaret Patterson went white as paper. She stood to flee. "Officers, detain Ms. Patterson immediately." Victoria's lawyer sat down heavily. It was over. "Mrs. Victoria Whitmore, you are immediately stripped of all guardianship rights. You will be remanded into custody pending investigation of child abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." Victoria screamed, "You can't do this! Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are. Bailiff, remove her." They dragged Victoria out in handcuffs, still screaming. Margaret was arrested next to her sister. Sophie sat in the middle of the courtroom, trembling. Jonathan rushed to her side, but Sophie only had eyes for Tanya. "Tanya." Tanya walked forward, knelt beside Sophie's wheelchair. "You did it," she whispered. "You brave, incredible girl. You saved yourself." Sophie shook her head fiercely. "I saved myself because you saved me first. That night at the diner, when you fed me, when you took me home, when you promised you'd never give up. That's when I knew I could fight. Because someone finally believed I was worth fighting for." Tanya pulled her into a fierce hug. Jonathan joined them. Billionaire, waitress, child, holding each other while cameras flashed. "Family isn't blood. It's who shows up, who stays, who fights. Outside, Jonathan faced the wall of press cameras. My daughter was saved today. Not by my money, not by lawyers. She was saved by a woman named Tanya Harris, a black waitress who had $17 to her name and gave every single penny to feed a hungry child she'd never met. He looked at Tanya standing with Sophie. Kindness isn't currency, but it reveals who's truly wealthy. And by that measure, Tanya Harris is the richest person I've ever known. The crowd erupted in applause. 1 week later. Jonathan's new house wasn't a mansion. It was a home. 4 bedrooms, a big warm kitchen, a backyard Sophie was already planning to fill with bright yellow sunflowers. Mom's favorite, she explained, sketching designs on napkins. Yellow everywhere. Tanya stood in the living room, still not quite believing any of this was real. You wanted to talk to me? Jonathan nodded. Please, sit. She sat. He remained standing, looking uncharacteristically nervous. I want to give you something. Jonathan, I already told you. I know. You don't want money. He almost smiled. So I'm not giving you money. I'm making an investment. He handed her an envelope. Inside, a letter on thick, official stationery. Ohio State University School of Nursing. Full scholarship. Tanya's hands trembled so badly she almost dropped it. I spoke to the dean personally, explained your situation, your scores, your history, your character. She agreed you deserve this. Not charity, recognition of who you already are. Tanya couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. You're going to be a nurse, Tanya. You're going to help thousands of people because you earned it, not because I bought it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Sophie burst through the door. She'd been eavesdropping from the hallway, fooling absolutely no one. Say yes, Tanya, please, please, please. Tanya laughed through her tears. Yes, okay, yes. Sophie cheered and wheeled herself straight into Tanya's arms. Jonathan watched them, his daughter and this woman who'd become family through nothing but grace and courage. The hollow feeling that had lived in his chest since Elizabeth died began, finally, to ease. This is what healing looks like. Earl arrived an hour later, carrying 4 pies and grumbling about traffic. Didn't know if you rich people kept real food in the house. Earl! Sophie hugged him fiercely. You came! Course I came. Someone's got to keep you people from burning the kitchen down. They sat around the table together. Billionaire, waitress, cook, and child, eating pie, drinking coffee, laughing at nothing and everything. Like family. Sophie pulled out the worn flashcards. Okay, Tanya. Nursing exam in 2 weeks. We're starting now. Tanya groaned dramatically. You're a tyrant. You're going to pass. I know it. How are you so sure? Sophie smiled, a real smile, full and bright. Because you're you, and you never give up. Jonathan leaned back, watching them, smiling. For the first time in 3 years, his house felt like home. 6 months later, the auditorium erupted in thunderous applause. Tanya Harris walked across the stage to receive her nursing certification. In the audience, Jonathan clapping and crying openly, Earl pretending he wasn't emotional. Sophie holding a giant homemade sign, I told you so! Tanya laughed through tears. She'd passed, graduated with honors, top of her entire class, $17. That's what started all of this. First day at Children's Hospital. Tanya walked into a patient room, badge gleaming. Tanya Harris, RN. A little girl lay in the bed, wheelchair beside her, eyes full of fear, completely alone. So much like Sophie. Tanya sat down, smiled warmly. Hey, sweetheart, I'm Tanya. Are you hungry? The girl looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "You'll stay with me?" Tanya took her small hand gently. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise." If this story touched your heart, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss a video. Share with someone who needs to hear that kindness still matters. Comment below. When did a stranger show you unexpected kindness? Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.